Here is the expanded, highly dramatic and emotionally intense version of the story. It weaves in additional twists, unexpected confrontations, and harrowing setbacks that force Maya to push her resilience to the absolute limit. Welcome back to my channel, everyone. If you're new here, I'm Maya. In our previous story, we walked through a grueling shift
You and your
at the
family
wood
must leave
workshop,
by Sunday.
bleeding from
The
a
new
minor
owner is
slip
moving
of
in.
the saw blade, under a sweltering 42°C summer heat, and bearing the quiet indignities of a laborer's life just to earn $6 a day. But today brought a small flicker of hope, a slightly better assignment cutting wooden toy blocks at a larger workshop equipped with a giant industrial fan, bringing my wage up to $8 for the day. But behind those $8 and the gentle words I voice over my old phone lies a day that nearly tore my entire world apart, a hidden crisis that almost brought me to my knees. Before we step into this emotional chapter, if you feel connected to my journey and want to walk beside me and boy, please take a second to click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support means more than words can say. Now, let's dive into today's story. The morning began at 6 o'clock with the temperature lingering at a relatively merciful 30 degrees Celsius. Outside, the alley was just beginning to stir. The faint clinking of glass coffee cups from a street cart, the rhythmic sweeping of bamboo brooms against concrete, and the distant muffled hum of early motorbikes starting up. As the pale, dusty sunlight crept through the cracks of my weathered wooden door, I sat on the edge of my creaky bed, scrolling through my old battered smartphone. My eyes welled up with hot tears as I read through hundreds of comments left on my previous video. For a long time, I had considered myself a 4-no girl. No family to lean on, no home to call my own, no college degree to open doors, and no stable job to secure my future. I used to feel utterly invisible in this vast, indifferent city, living in an 8-square-meter rented box with my only roommate and true family, boy. Yet, reading your words, people from thousands of miles away complimenting my English, offering heartfelt advice, and sending warm wishes from places I've only ever dreamed of, felt like the most refreshing breeze sweeping through this suffocating, low-income neighborhood. It gave me a brand new no to add to my list. No giving up, no matter how hot, brutal, or uncertain life gets. Sitting on the cool, slightly damp concrete floor, I opened a single banh mi I had bought from a street vendor. Money was tight, so I carefully tore the bread in half. Here, boy. Half for you, half for me, I whispered, feeding the soft, airy crumb to my loyal companion while keeping the dry, flaking crust for myself. Boy wagged his tail eagerly, his dark, soulful eyes reflecting unconditional love. He didn't care that we lived in a cramped room with peeling paint. He was just happy to be by my side. But, to be completely honest, I was saving a little room in my stomach. With the excitement of starting a new job that promised $8 a day instead of $6, I wanted to treat myself to something that felt like a real meal. After securing the door latch to keep Boy safe inside, I walked down the narrow, winding alleyway to a local breakfast stall and ordered a bowl of hot pho. In upscale Hanoi districts, a steaming bowl of pho loaded with prime cuts could easily cost $3 to $5. But here in our working-class sanctuary, a hearty bowl with rich broth, fresh herbs, and tender beef slices cost me just $0.7. Around 18,000 Vietnamese dong. As I sat on a tiny plastic stool, inhaling the rich, aromatic scent of star anise and cinnamon, I felt a rare surge of optimism. I thought to myself that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to turn around for me. But life has a twisted way of testing your resolve the very moment you dare to feel secure. At 7:30 in the morning, I arrived at the new workshop. Unlike the dark, cramped shed I had worked in previously, this space was spacious, well ventilated, and possessed what felt like a true lifesaver. A giant industrial fan mounted on the wall that blew a steady, powerful gust of cool air across the work floor. For a laborer who had spent days baking under corrugated iron roofs, that breeze alone felt like an unimaginable luxury. My boss for the day, a tall, stern man named Mr. Tuan, with calloused hands and an unforgiving eye for detail, handed me a stack of raw timber blocks and a sheet of precise measurement specifications. My task was to cut these large wooden blocks into tiny, perfectly uniform pieces. These small blocks would later be sanded smooth, painted in bright pastel colors, and packaged into intricate assembly toy sets for children, exported overseas, and sold on platforms like Amazon for anywhere between $20 to $200 a set. For my entire day of painstaking, precise labor, I would receive $8. Accuracy is everything here, my mister. Tuan warned, pointing his thick finger at the spinning, razor-sharp saw blade. One wrong blink, 1 millimeter off, and the entire piece is ruined. It won't fit into the toy assembly. If you waste my timber through carelessness, I'll dock your entire day's pay without hesitation. I swallowed hard, my throat feeling dry, and nodded as I took my seat before the machine. The motor roared to life, its high-pitched whine echoing against the high rafters of the shed. The work demanded absolute, unbroken concentration. The spinning steel blade whirred mere inches away from my bare fingertips, a constant, terrifying reminder that a single second of distraction or momentary lapse in focus could cost me my hand. I pushed the timber forward, millimeter by millimeter, aligning every cut with extreme caution. Fine, sweet, scented sawdust billowed into the air, coating my hair, eyelashes, and clothes like a dusting of fresh snow. Watching the cute little wooden blocks pile up at my side brought a strange, quiet sense of pride. However, around 10 in the morning, disaster almost struck. A senior male worker in the workshop, annoyed that a newcomer like me was assigned the workbench closest to the big industrial fan, roughly dumped a heavy crate of unrefined timber right next to my station. A violent thud shook my table just as my hands were guiding a block through the spinning saw blade. My heart leaped into my throat. I instinctively jerked my hands back, missing the whirring blade by a fraction of an inch. The sudden jolt caused the wood block to split unevenly, sending jagged splinters flying across the table. "Look at what you did!" The senior worker barked immediately, raising his voice so the whole workshop could hear. "She's wasting high-grade timber, boss. I told you hiring inexperienced young girls is a mistake." Mr. Tuan marched over, his brows furrowed in anger, staring down at the ruined block. My hands were shaking so violently, I had to hide them behind my back. "Is this how you respect my materials, Mr. Tuan demanded harshly. "That wood comes out of your pay." Panic seized my chest. Losing even $1 meant I wouldn't have enough to buy food for the week. I forced myself to stand tall, swallow my rising tears, and look Mr. Tuan dead in the eye. "Mr. Tuan, please, look at the cut," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "The cut is straight until the table was violently shaken from the side." I have cut over 200 perfect pieces this morning without a single error. You can measure every single one in my completed bin. Please, test my work fairly. Mr. Tuan looked at me, then at the senior worker who suddenly looked away, and finally picked up a caliper to measure a random handful of blocks from my finished bin. Every single one was precise to the exact millimeter. Mr. Tuan let out a grunt. Clean up the splinters. Get back to work. And both of you, keep your eyes on your own tables. Underline. I took a deep, shaky breath, wiping cold sweat from my forehead. I had defended my work and saved my wages, but the tension in the workshop was now suffocating. By 11:30, my back throbbed with a dull, aching pain, and my eyes burned from straining against the dust-filled air. But I kept pushing forward, block after perfect block. By 12 o'clock noon, the weather unleashed its full, merciless fury. The outdoor temperature spiked to a blistering 42 degrees Celsius, over 107 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside the workshop gates, the asphalt street baked until it shimmered with blinding heat waves, completely deserted as if the entire city had gone into hiding. Even the giant industrial fan inside the workshop began blowing air that felt increasingly lukewarm, as though the very atmosphere was evaporating into heat. I took a short break to share a simple lunch of rice, boiled morning glory, and salted pork with Mr. Tuan and the other workers, followed by a quick 30-minute nap on a narrow wooden bench to recharge for the afternoon shift. By 6 o'clock in the evening, the sun finally began its slow, agonizing descent, leaving behind a bruised purple twilight. My hands were stiff, my shoulders felt as heavy as lead. But I had finished every single piece, assigned to me without a single error. As I brushed the thick layer of sawdust off my apron, Mr. Tuan walked over, visibly impressed by my output. He pulled out his wallet and handed me the crisp $8 bill I had fought so hard to earn. I smiled, reaching out my trembling hand to accept it, feeling that the morning's drama was finally behind me. Just as my fingers touched the bill, my old phone vibrated violently in my apron pocket. It was a call from my landlady, a woman known throughout our alley for her explosive temper and zero tolerance for late payments. Me? Where on earth are you? Her voice screeched through the phone's crackling speaker, so loud that even Mr. Tuan turned to frown at me. The electrical junction box outside your room short-circuited an hour ago, because of that ancient rust bucket fan you leave running. It burnt out the main power line connecting your room to the grid. My heart dropped like a stone into the pit of my stomach. Auntie? Is boy okay? Is the room alright? I stammered, my voice trembling uncontrollably. The dog is fine. He's barking his lungs out. She snapped, showing no concern whatsoever. But the electrician is standing right here. Replacing the burnt cable and fixing the breaker costs $40. And because your room caused the spark, the neighbor downstairs is demanding $10 for his ruined food in the fridge. That's $50 total. You pay for it tonight, or I lock the door, keep your stuff, and throw you and that dog out on the street. I'm running a rental house, not a charity for broke girls. Click. The phone went dead. I stood frozen in the middle of the workshop, the $8 bill clutched in my hand, feeling suddenly worthless, like a piece of dry leaf. $50. To a person with zero savings, living day to day, $50 was an insurmountable mountain I couldn't possibly climb. Adding the $6 I had made yesterday to the $8 from today, I had barely $14 in my pocket, and that was supposed to cover our food, clean drinking water, and basic rent for the upcoming week. A sudden wave of intense dizziness washed over me. The ceiling seemed to tilt and spin, and the breeze from the industrial fan felt suddenly icy, chilling me to the core. I walked out of the workshop like a ghost, stepping onto the cooling pavement as hot tears blinded my vision. The crushing weight of my reality hit me all at once. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much sweat and blood I poured onto those wooden blocks, one unexpected accident could instantly wipe me out and render me homeless. I couldn't bring myself to walk straight back to the room. I felt too ashamed, too utterly defeated to face the landlady or look into Boy's innocent, trusting eyes. Carrying the unbearable burden in my chest, I wandered aimlessly through the twilight streets until I reached a small informal street market tucked into a quiet corner of our neighborhood. This was a homegrown market, a humble place where the elderly aunties from the surrounding alleys gathered after a long day to sell produce grown in their tiny backyard plots. Bunches of fresh morning glory, tree-ripened bananas, and bright red tomatoes still glistening with evening mist were laid out neatly on woven mats and plastic sheets. There were no fancy price tags or plastic packaging like in the high-end supermarkets, just raw, honest food sold for 20 cents a bundle. "Looking for some morning glory for dinner tonight, Mai?" an old auntie asked gently, offering me a warm, toothless smile from beneath her conical straw hat. I forced a faint, polite smile and shook my head, unable to speak because of the thick, painful knot lodged in my throat. Seeing these hard-working women who had spent their entire lives struggling against poverty, yet still managed to smile and treat a stranger with kindness, brought a stinging sensation to my eyes. The contrast was devastating. The world around me was full of warmth, life, and community, yet I felt completely stranded on a desolate island of my own misfortune. I sat down on a cold concrete step near the edge of the market, hiding my face in my knees as the first muffled sob escaped my chest. Why was life so relentlessly, unforgivingly hard? I didn't ask for luxury or wealth. I didn't ask for expensive clothes, fine dining, or a grand apartment. All I wanted was to earn an honest living through hard labor, keep a tiny roof over my head, and feed my dog. Was that really too much to ask from this world? For a long, agonizing hour, I sat there as darkness settled, seriously contemplating giving up. The desperate thought of packing my few belongings into a single plastic bag and leaving the city crossed my mind. But where would I go? I had no family home to return to, no parents waiting with open arms, no ancestral land to shelter me. This tiny, stifling room in Hanoi was the only anchor I had in this entire world. If I lost it, I lost everything. Sitting in that dark corner, watching the streetlights flicker to life one by one, casting long, lonely shadows, I realized that crying wouldn't pay the $50 fee. Despair wouldn't keep boys safe from the street. I took a deep, shaky breath, wiped my wet face with the dusty sleeve of my shirt, and pulled myself up. I had to stand back up. I had to find a way, no matter how humiliating or difficult it might be. When I finally reached our alley around 8 o'clock, the situation was far worse than I had imagined. My landlady was standing outside my room, holding a heavy padlock in her hand. Beside her, the angry downstairs neighbor was yelling, pointing at his open fridge. A small crowd of curious onlookers from the alley had gathered. "There she is," the neighbor shouted. "She owes me $10 for spoiled meat. Her cheap fan ruined the power grid. I'm locking this door right now." "Mai?" the landlady declared, raising the padlock. Unless I see $50 in cash. You and your dog are sleeping on the street tonight. From inside the dark, locked room, I could hear Boy scratching frantically against the wooden door, whining in utter terror at the aggressive voices outside. Hearing his desperate cries shattered whatever fear I had left inside me, replaced by a fierce protective instinct. "Auntie, stop!" I shouted, stepping between her and the door. "You cannot lock my dog inside a dark room with no ventilation in 40-degree heat. That is cruel." "Then pay the money," she balked. "I have $14 right here," I said, whipping out the crushed bills from my pocket and holding them high so the whole crowd could see. $14 is 2 full days of my blood and sweat. Take this as a down payment. As for the neighbor, my fan was plugged into a certified surge protector. The electrician himself told me last month that the alley's main junction box was outdated and overloaded. You know that box was a fire hazard waiting to happen, Auntie. Don't blame a 22-year-old girl working for $8 a day for your neglected infrastructure. A murmur went through the crowd of neighbors. Several elderly aunties began whispering, agreeing that the alley's power grid had indeed been flickering for months. The landlady's face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "I'm a hard worker," I continued, my voice ringing clear through the alley. "I don't steal, I don't beg. I will work overtime every single day this week. I will pay you the remaining $26 for the electrical repair by Sunday. But I will not pay for ruined food caused by an alley-wide power grid failure, and I will not let you lock my dog in the heat." The electrician stepped forward, coughing awkwardly. "She's right, landlady. The main breaker was corroded. The fan just triggered what was already about to blow. $26 covers the new wire." "Wow, what the hell?" The landlady glared at me, realizing she had lost the court of public opinion in the alley. She snatched the $14 from my hand with a harsh glare. Sunday evening, my every single cent of the $26. If you are 1 penny short, you are out. She threw the door key onto the concrete pavement and stormed off. I picked up the key with trembling fingers, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The room was pitch black and stiflingly hot, devoid of electricity. But the moment the door creaked open, Boy leaped into my arms. He buried his wet nose into my neck, his tail thumping violently against the floor, whimpering in pure relief. I collapsed onto the bare concrete floor, pulling Boy tightly into my arms and burying my face in his soft fur. "I'm so sorry, Boy. I'm so sorry I let them scare you," I sobbed quietly into the dark. Boy licked the salty tears from my cheeks, resting his warm, heavy head against my shoulder. I pulled a small carton of milk and a pouch of wet food I had bought at a convenience store out of my bag, feeding him by the dim light of my phone screen. In that dark, hot, 8-square-meter box, watching my dog eat peacefully, the icy despair around my heart finally began to thaw. Later that night, with the room still shrouded in heavy darkness and heat radiating off the brick walls, I sat on my bed with my old, battered phone. To bring you these short videos every evening, I spend over 4 hours every single night editing raw clips, syncing audio, and recording English voiceovers on this tiny, lagging screen with a cracked display. My fingers were stiff and sore from cutting wood all day, and my throat felt dry and raspy. But as I opened the YouTube Creator app and began reading your comments from the previous upload, all my physical tiredness completely evaporated into thin air. One viewer had written, your English pronunciation is so clear and pleasant. Have you ever thought about applying to work at international restaurants or hotels in Hanoi? It might pay much better and be far less dangerous than manual labor at wood workshops. Random, undercount. Reading that thoughtful comment made me smile through my tears in the dark room. I am so deeply, profoundly grateful for such caring, genuine advice. But the truth is, right now, I want to challenge myself. I want to pour my entire heart and soul into making these videos work. In real life, my existence is quiet, isolated, and painfully lonely. Day in and day out, it's just me and Boy in this tiny rented space. I don't have friends to meet for coffee on weekends, nor do I have family to call when life becomes overwhelming. That's why I chose to make YouTube videos, not just as a desperate attempt to earn a humble living, but more importantly, to use the small screen as a window to the outside world. Through this screen, I get to make real friends, share my raw reality without shame, and connect with kind souls across different continents whom I would otherwise never have met in my entire life. Every comment you leave, every story you share about your own life, your country, your struggles, and your daily weather feels like a priceless gift, delivered straight to my little room. You give me a sense of belonging that I haven't felt since I was a little girl. You make this 4-no girl feel like she actually has a purpose, a global family, and a reason to keep pushing forward against all odds. Around midnight, as I finished recording the final line of the voiceover for tonight's video, a faint hum echoed through the walls as the electrician finally reconnected the alley line. The overhead light bulb flickered to life, casting a warm, gentle glow over our tiny sanctuary, and the old fan began its familiar rhythmic, rattling whir. I looked over at Boy, who was fast asleep on his little rag mat, his belly full and his breathing deep and peaceful. I looked at my callous, dust-stained hands and then at my phone screen, where your messages of love and support continue to light up the dark. Life in this sprawling city is unforgivingly tough, and being a 22-year-old girl with no safety net means that every single day is a high-stakes gamble for survival. Tomorrow morning, I will wake up early, face the scorching 42°C sun once again, and work twice as hard at the workshop to pay off the remaining $26 of my debt. There will undoubtedly be more obstacles, more unexpected bills, and more days where the heat and exhaustion feel completely unbearable. But as I lie down beside Boy tonight, listening to the steady hum of the fan, I no longer feel broken or defeated. I am not a 4-no girl anymore, because I have hope, I have resilience, I have Boy, and I have all of you walking this path beside me. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to listen to my ordinary, messy, yet deeply meaningful story tonight. If you love the journey of a girl and her dog fighting for a better tomorrow, please consider leaving a comment, hitting like, and subscribing to support my channel. Your kindness is the greatest gift I could ever ask for. I wish you all a peaceful, restful night, wherever you are in the world. Good night, and see you in the next video.